Morning folks, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. What I thought I'd do this morning is just kind of do a little bit of a clothing type layout for you guys to talk about what I wear in the winter in Ohio, depending on what I'm doing and really depending on the temperature extremes or not extremes that we have this time of year in Ohio, because it can be in the 50s and 60s one day and be down around the 20s or below that the next day, especially in late December and January. So there's a lot of different clothing items that I use throughout the year and throughout that winter time period. I thought it'd be worth discussing them, and it's also worth discussing what I use when I'm moving about, like on the trap line over long distance, versus what I use when I'm sitting around a camped area and I'm not going to be walking long distance. So stay with me and we'll get started. Okay, so as we start to look at clothing, let's kind of first look at our extremities, because I think that's something that a lot of people tend to ignore, is your extremities. And remember that the blood circulates to your extremities. So if your extremities are cold, like your feet and your hands, then you're going to have cooled blood going back into your core. So keeping your extremities warm is very important, as well as keeping your core cold, or keeping your core warm, excuse me. So let's talk about that. First of all, like today, it's not too bad. It's probably in the 30s right now. And I've just got on a regular Thinsulate toboggan that you can buy at any Tractor Supply or Walmart for, probably less than $7 or $8. And they work fine. They're not the warmest thing in the world, but they do keep that heat trapped. They do tend to make you sweat a little bit if you're walking over distance, but it's easy enough to just take that thing off and not worry about it if it does get warm and stuff in a pocket. So I tend to carry one of these quite a bit. Now, if it gets much colder than that, and I need something more than that on my head, I've got a couple different options here. This is a Fal Raven hat, and Fal Raven Company out of Sweden. This is G1000 material, which means you can wax this material to make it more waterproof. It does have earmuffs on it that are made from a faux fur, which means it's not a real fur, but it feels pretty close to real fur. And you can either drop those flaps down over your ears and actually strap that thing around your chin if you want to keep you really warm, or you can just fold it up over the top like a normal bomber style hat, and you can snap the thing down to wear it a little bit looser on your head if you want to. The other hat that I've got here is made by Sasta, and Sasta is a Finnish brand of clothing. We're going to talk a little bit about Fal Raven and Sasta today, but we're going to talk about more inexpensive clothing as well. And this Sasta hat is more of the old school hunting style hat with the ear flaps on it. It's made out of wool, so it's plenty warm, but it's not near as hot as this is over distance. But both of these hats are good choices for keeping your ears, keeping your head covered, and keeping things warm. So those are the hats that I generally wear unless I'm just wearing a ball cap. But again, once it gets down to 30s, I like to have at least some kind of a toboggan with me. And I do wear 100% wool toboggans too sometimes, but I tend to find that 100% wool toboggans shrink up really bad even after they've been wet from things like sweat or perspiration, and then they've dried. They tend to shrink up pretty bad. If your wife ever makes the mistake of throwing one in the washer, you'll probably never be able to wear it again. Now, as far as your hands go, I'm not a big fan of gloves unless it's really cold outside or I'm working on something. And so I tend to just carry these simple rag wool type gloves that are pretty inexpensive to buy. You can get these things on Amazon or any place like that. If you prefer 100% wool, you can still buy the 100% wool style inserts that go into the military style leather glove. If you want wool, you can get that. But I find that these rag wool gloves, which aren't 100% wool, they're probably 70-30, do a pretty good job of keeping my hands warm. And I also carry a pair in my pocket here of rag wools that are very similar, except for the fact that they have open fingers in them and they have a flap that you can pull over the top to turn them into a mitten. So those are good for things like out on the trap line where sometimes you want your hands free, you don't want to take off your gloves, but you need that dexterity of your fingers. So these work pretty good for that. Now, if it gets cold enough that my hands are cold in these type gloves, then what I generally do is I'll combine a glove like a rag wool glove with an actual 100% fur mitten like these that are made out of beaver hide here. and these are made from beaver and deer. They're deer here and beaver here, and your hands are never going to get cold in something like that as long as you keep them dry. You know, it's just like anything else. Once you get it wet, you got a problem. So you've got to make sure you keep that stuff dry. Now, the other thing that I'll do is I'll wear work gloves a lot of times if I'm doing a lot of heavy brush work and I'm reaching down into thorns and brambles and things like that. And, you know, you can just get a pair of leather gloves from Tractor Supply or Walmart or someplace like that, and they'll work fine for you. I do a lot of gear testing for a lot of companies, so I've got some fairly expensive gloves here. These are Hestra gloves. These were designed by my buddy Johan Skolman, and they're made by a company called Hestra out of Sweden. And these are Crud Gloves, and these are also made in Sweden. They're handmade, hand-stitched, made in Sweden. They're a really, really nice, heavy work glove. And again, they're pretty expensive. So it just depends on what you want to do and what you're doing. Like I said, I get the opportunity to test a lot of gear, so I can use some more expensive things without having to spend the money all the time, because I'm testing the gear for a company to help promote their brand and to help assure them that their brand or the quality of their brand is good. So that pretty much takes care of the hands and the head. Now, on my feet, what I generally do, I'll be honest with you, I wear wool socks year round. Doesn't matter what time of year it is, I wear wool socks. And I generally stay with just two different types of wool socks. I wear an Ultra Max by Wigwam in the summer, fall, and spring. And these are a very thin wool sock. And then I wear what's called a Hunter's Foot brand, which is another wool sock made by Hunter's Foot. And they're a thicker sock, and they're a lot longer sock. So I wear those a lot of times if I'm in muck, what I call muck boot weather. And I wear, you know, muck boots on my feet the majority of the winter because they're warm. There's just no question about it. And it doesn't matter if the edge waters are great for the fall. Something like the wetland boot is a really good winter boot for me. It very seldom gets cold enough in Ohio that you need something like an Arctic Pro. So I'll generally wear some type of a light boot in the summertime, and then I'll wear a heavier pull-on boot like these muck boots all through the fall and winter months. And if I'm wearing the heavier boots, I wear the heavier socks. If I'm wearing lighter boots like my Solomons that I wear a lot of times in the summertime, the lace-up boot, then I'll wear a thinner sock. And you could combine these two if you needed to in extreme cold weather if these boots weren't enough for you. But remember that the rubber boot itself, or the neoprene inner boot like these muck boots, they trap a lot of heat. So they're going to make your feet sweat. And I generally roll mine down at the top just so they're not tight on my calf, because my calves are fairly big and these things get tight around my calf when I pull them up, and they hold in all of that moisture. So I try to roll them down a little bit to release some of that moisture out from inside. But if you want to trap heat in there, you could always roll them back up. The other thing to remember about boots like this is, you know, you're trying to trap dead airspace in there is what keeps you warm. So if you get enough socks on your feet that these boots fit you really tight, your feet are going to tend to be colder. If you are trying to keep your feet warm, you want some looseness in there to trap some dead airspace. And really, one of the last things you want to do as far as hunting goes is you don't want to walk a big long trek into a tree stand or a blind or an ambush area that you're going to hunt and then sit down in cold weather without changing your socks out. And so I've almost always got an extra pair of socks in my backpack just for that reason, because feet are going to sweat, and then they're going to get cold while you're sitting still. They'll be fine as long as you keep moving, but as soon as you stop, you're going to get cold. So that kind of takes care of the feet. Now, I do wear Danner Pronghorns a lot as well, and Danner Pronghorn is a great boot, and they do me really, really well for even into the fall, no problem. So I kind of switch again. I switch back and forth. I work with Muck, I work with Danner. I don't work with Solomon, but I recently started wearing their boots due to the ruck training that I was doing, and they seem to be a very lightweight, rugged boot. I've probably got easily over 200, maybe 300 miles on my Solomons now, and I'm very, very happy with them, but they're not going to be warm enough for a winter environment. So that kind of takes us care of all of our extremities. So now let's talk about our lower body. Now, I always wear minus 33 degree merino wool long underwear. So I've got a shirt and I've got the bottoms, and I've got a couple pairs of each of these, and these are winter gear. I don't have any on right now. Again, it's in the 30s. I'm wearing a very thin pair of canvas pants right now that are just El Cheapo stuff from Tractor Supply. Same thing with this flannel shirt. Same thing with this long underwear shirt. They're all very inexpensive stuff, but I'm not moving around. I'm not sweating. I don't have to worry about wicking. All I have to worry about is keeping warm, and I've got this outer shell on, which we'll talk about in a minute, that helps keep all that warm air trapped inside from the layers. But if I'm going to be moving, or I'm going to be doing stuff, or I'm going to be staying out for longer periods of time, overnight and whatnot, I'm going to use this underwear made by -33 degrees, because this stuff is not only wicking, but it's also very, very warm to sleep in and things like that. So I've been using this stuff for years and years, and I swear by -33 degrees. A lot of people ask me about, you know, base layers, and I would swear by -33 degrees. I don't really care that it's expensive, because it's definitely worth the money. Okay, well, that takes care of that. Now let's talk about first pants. As I said, I'm wearing a cheap pair of canvas pants from Tractor Supply, and I wear the jeans from Tractor Supply, the Schmidt brand jeans, all the time, especially in the summertime. But again, that's just piddling around. If I'm going to be serious about it, be out there for a week, be out teaching a class, on the ground, beating my stuff up, then I want some more quality pants on. And the pants that I've been testing lately have been Fal Raven pants, and these are the Vita Pros. And again, you know, you can get away with inexpensive, or you can spend the money and have something that's really, really nice, that's long lasting. These are G1000 material, which means you can wax them to make them more waterproof, but as you do that, they're going to be less breathable. So you got to find that happy medium. These have a pocket inside the knee where you can put a pad, so if you're going to be down on your knees a lot, teaching, starting fires, doing things like that, you can put a pad in there. They have a clip on the front of them here that clips into your boot lace, so your pants don't pull up or get yanked up around your boots. They don't ride up. They also have a band inside the leg or the cuff so that you can blouse them around the edge of your boots as well if you choose to do that. They have lots and lots of pockets on them that fit saws and multi-tools and things like that. Lots of external cargo pockets. And these are probably, for the money, the best pants I've ever had on. The one warning I would give you with these, just being straight up honest, is don't do any long distance trekking with these things without wearing underwear. If you go commando like I do most of the time, you're going to pay the price if you wear these things over distance without underwear on. You're going to chafe bad. So that's the one downside to these versus canvas or cotton, is you're going to need to wear underwear with them. But they're a great pant. As again, are canvas pants if you can keep them dry and you're just going to be around camp. You know, lots and lots of our grandfathers walked around in cotton flannel shirts and denim blue jeans, hunting, trapping, doing all the things that they do in the woods. They were just smart enough to keep them dry. All right, so that takes care of pants other than wool. So this pair of pants here, again, the more extreme weather. This is a pair of Sasta from Finland. It's spelled S-A-S-T-A, Sasta. And they are a Finnish company that makes a lot of boreal forest type clothing. These are heavy duty wool pants that you have to wear suspenders with. They're designed for suspenders, but they are really, really heavy wool. They're really extremely, extremely warm. And it's not something that I'd want to be wearing if I were walking a great distance necessarily. But if I were working around camp in an extreme cold weather situation, these things are the king. I also have the jacket that goes with them by the same company that's made from wool. And you can look them up on the internet. Like I said, they are a Finnish company, but because of that, you know that they're making good quality gear because they're operating in a boreal forest environment. Now, for lighter weight stuff, getting away from the wool for a minute, you know, this Anorak here is a G1000 Anorak by Fal Raven, and this is part of the number series, and this is a number 10 Anorak. And it's a pullover Anorak, and there are ups and downs with pull-on stuff. I also have a Leicester River Boyle shirt that I wear quite often. But when you get into things that you pull over that won't zip all the way down, you can't open up to release heat. If you're doing much traveling with those garments, you're going to get extremely hot and not be able to release heat by removing layers. So you have to think about that. But this one is very thin. Again, it's made out of the G1000 material. It's got a wire band around the hood, so that you can adjust the hood. It's got a tensioner on the back side so you can adjust the hood shorter or longer over the top of your face. It's got main pockets on the side of it, zippers that go down the side for ventilation, and there's double zippers so they go up and down depending on what you want to do there. And they have a drawstring on them to tighten them up around, or to tighten it up around the waist if you want to. Again, this is a Fal Raven, and it is a number, I know people are going to ask, number 10 Anorak. And this would be considered what I would consider my lightweight fall Anorak. I would put this on over the top of what I'm wearing now, like this, or over the top of a wool base layer or a double wool base layer. And a lot of times I'll put on the minus 33 degrees, and then I'll put on something like this Fal Raven wool sweater, which is very reminiscent of the old military sweaters that's made out of wool. It's got zippers and snaps on it, and this thing is really heavy duty. And if you put this on and you put that lighter Anorak over top of it, that's a pretty good combination for some pretty cold weather. Although I think the best combination is always going to be this field coat and the wool, but we'll talk about that as we go. And I've been wearing that Sasta a lot lately as well, over the top of something like this wool flannel type shirt that's made from wool by Fal Raven, which is also a really nice garment because it's lightweight, but it's wool, so it's warm. You put this over the top of that minus 33 degree base layer, and then put something like this Anorak over top of it as field jacket, and you really got a good win-win situation there. So that takes us down to the Leicester River Bushcraft and the jacket that I'm wearing. And everybody's pretty familiar, I think, with the Leicester River Bushcraft wool Anorak. I've been pushing that thing for years. I've been wearing it for years. This one is several years old, and it's still as good as the day it was made. I can't speak highly enough about the quality of his stuff. It's Leicester River makes some really, really good stuff, and Jason's a really good guy to deal with. But again, the disadvantage of something like this is the inability to release the heat by opening it up. So this is more of a sitting still, sitting in a blind hunting, sitting around camp, things like that's what I'm going to wear this for. And then I would reserve something I could open up and open the layers up on or remove quickly for on a truck. But something like this is great for around camp or a hunting scenario, like I said. That brings me to the one that I've got on my field coat, which is probably my most used piece of gear in the fall and the winter time. It's made out of G1000. This one is a number 68 field coat. These are fairly hard to come by in the US, but you can get a hold of them certain times of the year. The number series by Fal Raven, I hear a lot of people talk about Fal Raven and the priciness of Fal Raven gear, and it is pricey. But again, you get what you pay for a lot of times. They do guarantee this stuff. This is G1000 material, so it's a revolutionary type material that can be waxed to make it more waterproof. Again, that's going to affect the breathability of it. But this jacket is, all of their number series jackets are made in the UK. They're not made in Asia. They're all made in the UK. So if you buy a number series type jacket like this number 68 by Fal Raven, you're paying for something that was made, you know, in Europe. You're not paying for something that was made in Asia. And I think that seems to be a big sticking point for people, although it really shouldn't be a lot of times, because you know, when you think about what certain countries do good, obviously, you know, the Asian countries are famous for sewing. So if anybody could make a good garment, it should be them. They're also very good at sourcing new types of garments and revolutionary type garments and technical garments. So again, you know, I think that certain things made in certain countries, we shouldn't balk at just because it's not made in the USA or made in the UK or made in Scandinavia, because, you know, some of these people are experts at what they do. And I think in Asia, one of the things that they're expert at, not only in extrusion of stainless steel, which is just about all the stainless steel you buy comes from Asia, well, pretty much all of it. And now, you know, a lot of clothing, tents, backpacks, and technical gear come from Asia as well. And I think that's because they do the job so well. It's not necessarily that it's a lot cheaper. Most of the time it is. But depending on, you know, the factory that's making it and things like that, it can get rather expensive. So that's just food for thought. But I wanted to go over some of this stuff with you guys today. And I wanted you to understand that, you know, you don't necessarily, like I've said a lot of times, you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money, although you can. And it really depends on what your intention is with that gear. A lot of times I either spend money on gear or I have expensive gear that I'm testing for different companies, so I have access to that more expensive gear, but I also use this gear all the time because I spend a lot of time in the woods. And I would say that if you're just a weekend camper, or maybe a 1 weekend a month camper and things like that, you don't necessarily have to spend the dramatic amounts of money to get the best quality gear you can buy. But remember that Horace Kephart said, you know, anyone that is going to recreate in the outdoors often should buy the best gear, the best quality gear that his purse can afford. And I think you just start small and work your way up. Like I said, I still wear a lot of stuff that doesn't hardly cost anything. These pants are about $12 or $13 a pair at Tractor Supply. You know, these flannel shirts are right at 20 bucks, and these long underwear shirts are Eagle brand from like Walmart, and they're about 10 bucks. So I wear a lot of lower line or lower expense clothing that works just fine for me. Although, you know, when you look at a pair of pants like this that cost 13 or 15 bucks, they don't last very long. I wear them out very, very quickly. So how many of these pairs of pants would I buy before I would wear out one pair of Fal Raven Vita Pros? So there's some give and take there as well. But I wanted to go through some of that stuff with you guys today. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.